Can you have too much musical knowledge or not enough? Well, many amazing musicians were actually never taught certain aspects of music.
I'm hopeless at musical theory. I wish I was better at music theory.
So I studied painting, not music. I never studied music, which shows if you see me trying to play piano or anything. I was particularly interested in the experimental music of people like Cage and Christian Wolff and Morton Feldman. Though I loved pop music, but I thought, I can't play anything, so what future do I have in that? But then synthesizers came along. I was interested in electronics and tape recorders and so on. And the synthesizer, the interesting thing about it was that it was an instrument without a history, really. So there was nobody to tell you how it should be played. You could make your own rules about it.
Like traditional composition, I've never been trained. There might have been one module that I worked one-on-one with a professor. But for scoring to film and TV, that's all self-taught, and working alongside and touring with composer Clint Mansell, I absorbed a lot from him as well. And I think it's just a lot about doing it. Like you have to just do it, work on it, experiment and try. And I think that's where you learn a lot.
As with many bands, we didn't really talk in musical terms anyway. I don't really remember people saying, oh, what is that, it's a C to a G to a...
There are so many amazing musicians who don't have a formal music education. We can conclusively say that it's not necessary. But it's been interesting talking to different composers who have told us that even if they have got a lot of formal musical knowledge, they're not really conscious of using it.
I mean, I would say that even though I learned about counterpoint at school and university, I don't tend to think about it as counterpoint. I'm rarely kind of writing and thinking, I'm doing counterpoint right now.
But are you doing counterpoint?
But yes.
I think, yes, I do have that foundation running in the background, but I tend to just kind of move through emotions and feelings mostly.
But when I'm writing, I think it tends to be a lot just relying on ear, or things I've heard. So I would have listened to musicians I love, composers I love, remember or hear in my head what they've done and try and put that in my own work, rather than it being, oh, I know what this is. It's more by ear. But I do see a value in understanding what you're doing as well. But it's not...
But maybe when you're writing, isn't the time to be thinking about it?
Not always. And sometimes it's just more organic if you are going with what your ear goes to.
I mean, they're tools rather than rules. You can use them, you can ignore them.
Unless I was really stuck and I'm like, I love this chord so much and I love this, but then I want the feeling to be epic and big and open, then I might go, okay, let's go back to scales. Let's try every option that's available. Let's try, and that in that moment I might, but 95% of the time, I think I'm just going off in my head, hearing things and then experimenting and trying to piece it together that way.
There are no rules. I really don't believe it. It's about each song. It's like the song comes out and you go, oh, that's appropriate for that song, or it's not, it's like, okay, that works.
I do like to break the rules, but it is kind of handy ammunition, I suppose. You can just say to yourself, okay, I will, change the key. I know this chord progression. I know this will work here, so I'll try that. And there are things like, retrograde and inversion, and all of those techniques help. And, you can expand on those techniques. It's helpful to have that knowledge, you don't have to, but it is helpful.
There are some things that I'm not sure I necessarily learned, as in was taught, but I kind of acknowledged along the way, like very simple things like often adding a seventh will make it sound a bit more jazzy, and adding a ninth sometimes makes it a bit more musical theatre. And there are things that you can be aware of in terms of that, but again, I don't think you have to have the knowledge. You can just use your ear.
Well, I don't know my theory, you see. I'm not good on theory. It's all through the ear. But then there will be certain, certainly on a chord on a guitar, maybe you've got a chord and you go, oh, I really like that, and how you might string that out. There's that chord, and then I could do that or that. Unfortunately, and I don't recommend this, I think having theory is really important because you get to that point a lot quicker. What I'm doing is how does it feel? Which is ultimately the right way, but it can often be you get there a little bit slower than if you had the theory and you go, oh, I can get there like that.
It's almost like I selectively choose to kind of forget some rules because I want to break them and I want to figure it out on my own. I studied, piano classically and theory, and also theory in university. So I have that level of theory. But again, when I was even studying it, I kind of, I don't know, it kind of like just got me a little bit annoyed because I'm like, okay, cool, this works for certain stuff and that's great, but I don't want to be like structured in a cage. I want to break free. I want to explore and experiment.
Just to say, George Martin was a great arranger. So on vocals, they worked a lot on the 3-part vocal harmonies, which can't be understated. And George Martin had the theory, so he really helped them get to that point as well.
So it's quite good having someone in the room who's sort of got speed of thought on
Definitely,
those technical things.
Absolutely. And in Radiohead, Johnny is always very, very good on that because he's a classically trained musician. So that was always very helpful that he would go, oh, well, what you're doing there is you're doing that, and yeah.
And so you can just get the result very quickly
Yeah.
and you don't have to stop the flow of the creativity.
Yeah. The most important thing, though, is to feel when it's right. And you don't have to have the theory, like you're saying. Lennon, McCartney and the Beatles didn't have the theory to know. They just knew it felt right. You can have the theory and go, well, you could try this, but it's the key thing is knowing how you feel. That's right. That's it.
I think, when you're dealing with someone with technical expertise, though, in terms of the musicality, in terms of the mixing, in terms of the size of the sound, in terms of the sonics of it, that you will have to develop a respect for. The longer you do it, you'll have to try and understand where that person's coming from because they've trained, they've done all the hours looking at this stuff and understand it in a way that you don't necessarily yet.
That's a big thing in jazz, just learning the language of jazz or whatever it is you love to the point where it becomes subconscious and just comes out in your work naturally so that you're not... I think sometimes if you overthink things when you're writing, it can strangle the piece a little bit, or strangle what you're trying to do, because then it becomes a bit more of a theoretical exercise than what you're trying to express.
It's going to be part of how I do things because these are things that I learned growing up and at uni would have spent 3 years doing. That language just kind of becomes part of your vocabulary. And if you're working with people that understand that language, then it's reasonably easy to kind of communicate certain ideas.
Because I don't know what my experience would be if I didn't have that. So it could be a completely different thing and I might not be where I am right now.
I studied really hard at the kind of theoretical side of music when I was at, school and music college. And so I would say I have a lot of knowledge, but I've learnt all of that and then I've sort of thrown it out the window.
So what's interesting is that even those people who have been through formal education, this knowledge sort of somehow just seems to sit in the background. It's just something that they've got and they may or may not use, and mostly subconsciously. But music education isn't something that you just find in a college or in a classroom. Learning to sing a lullaby when you're a kid, that's music education. Jamming in a band, that's music education. Working out a chord sequence and finding it online for a track that you're interested in, that's music education. I mean, Paul McCartney didn't have theory, and
No.
Lennon didn't.
No, they
didn't. But they did. They were basically in a covers band for the first 5 years of their life.
exactly.
They learnt thousands of songs,
Yeah.
and so absorbing theory in that way.
Yeah.
Because basically that is knowing your theory. It's
Yeah.
just not knowing the names of things.
No, and you go and they have that story, don't they? They would go to Birkenhead or whatever because somebody showed them the B7 chord.
Because I've been quite lucky. Growing up, I had piano lessons from age 6, had clarinet lessons from age 11, saxophone from 13. I was in county wind bands and stuff like that. So I think my ear, and music also was a huge thing at home, my ear has been developed over the years, and that's what I rely on a lot.
And this education is something that you have, and you'll wear it perhaps lightly. It needn't be a burden. It's something that you can carry quite easily through your musical life. You don't need to be scared of having too much of it or too little.
Because you can be an amazing composer without having any knowledge, you know. And there's so many different ways of writing music. You don't have to know really about notation, because there are computer programs like Ableton, for example, where you can just take beats and stuff that are already there, and you can change and mix to your own sort of feelings. Anyone can create music, and it really doesn't matter how academic you are.
Always my quest is to learn more, and you can always learn. You can learn from everyone.
With martial arts, the great thing is that you're constantly having to deal with things that you don't do well in order to improve, and so you're cultivating a healthy relationship with your limitations. Also, humility towards people that are teaching you. Finding that place of humility is a really important thing, I think.
And we are constantly learning, and there's never an end point where you know everything and you've arrived. Like, it's just like a lifelong journey of music creation, and yeah, kind of enjoying the journey. I think that's a really important thing to remember.
And you'll find tons more on our channel or on our website, both musical knowledge and ideas, but also the thoughts, reflections and advice of all these brilliant musicians that we've interviewed.